I had just returned home from a long business trip, feeling the jet lag hit me like a ton of bricks. After weeks in Dubai, I was craving nothing more than a quiet night in my own bed, maybe order some pizza, and just sleep off the exhaustion. But as soon as I stepped out of the ride share with my suitcase rolling behind me, I noticed something off. It was the lavender robe hanging on the railing of my guest house porch. Now, this was no ordinary robe. I saw a lavender robe, the same one I had packed away in storage before I left. The exact same one. At first, I thought maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe it was a strange coincidence. But then I saw her, a woman I had never seen in my life, lounging on a deck chair, sipping from a wine glass that I immediately recognized from my own kitchen set. She didn't jump up or apologize when she saw me. She just waved and casually said, "Welcome to the neighborhood, stranger. Hope you're not here to disturb the guest house guest." That was the moment I realized I wasn't the homeowner anymore. I wasn't even the Saw and VY Ted Saw guest. I was the one who had just walked into a very twisted HOA soap opera, and I wasn't even in on the plot. I had spent months making sure my property, my little suburban retreat, was HOA-free. But somehow, here I was, standing in front of a total stranger in my own guest house. The backstory was this. 3 weeks earlier, I had left for Dubai. Everything had been locked up tight. The main house was double secured, the guest house was locked, and I had a friend Jasper checking in every few days. I even installed motion-triggered cameras around the property. I thought everything was in order, yet here I was, staring at a complete stranger sitting on my porch like she owned the place. As I walked closer, I couldn't help but take in the ridiculousness of it all. This woman, probably in her mid-50s, had tightly curled blonde hair that screamed, overprocessed, a name tag that read Saw Karen Saw, and a look that could only be described as the kind of expression someone would wear if they had been used to being obeyed their entire life. I took a deep breath, cleared my throat, and said, "Excuse me, I think there's been a mistake. This is my property." She didn't flinch. Instead, she looked at me like I had just claimed the moon. "Your property?" "Oh no, honey," she said. "The HOA designated this guest house for temporary use while my condo is fumigated. Leonard signed the approval. Check the registry." Leonard? I didn't even know a Leonard. And I sure as hell didn't authorize the HOA to turn my guest house into a community Airbnb. But Karen wasn't backing down. She stood up, her dog yapping at my feet, and dismissed me with a flick of her wrist. "I don't need a lease," she said. "I've got community authority. The HOA board allows emergency accommodations. I'm allergic to sulfur, and my building's full of it. If you have a problem, take it up with Leonard." I wasn't about to argue with her while jet-lagged, but something in my gut told me this was more than a simple misunderstanding. I pulled out my phone and texted Jasper. "Saw, did you notice anyone staying in the guest house last week?" "Saw," he replied almost immediately. "Saw, thought you had a renter or something. Figured you cleared it with the HOA." "Saw, well, I didn't. And now, I was dealing with a trespasser on my property." I waited until Karen left for what she claimed was a pedicure appointment. As soon as she was out of sight, I stormed into the guest house and documented everything. She had moved in like she owned the place, clothes in the dresser, food in the fridge, even a calendar on the wall with notes scribbled on it, like she was planning to stay for a month. I didn't touch anything. I just took video and pictures. Then I checked the locks. Standard deadbolt. Easy enough to replace. So, I did. Within 30 minutes, the guest house had a fresh lock system. I sat in my car, sipping stale gas station coffee, and waited for her to return. When she did, she tried the door. First, she jiggled the knob. Then, she knocked. Then, she pounded. When that didn't work, she shrieked. And that's when she saw me in my car. "You locked me out," she yelled. "That's illegal. That's a violation of renters' rights. I'm calling the police." She whipped out her phone and dialed 911, telling the operator that I had broken into her temporary residence and changed the locks on her. She used terms like unlawful entry and tenant harassment, even throwing around the word squatter evy tie-in. I didn't panic. I just sat back and waited. The officers showed up within 10 minutes, and Karen ran up to them like she was reporting a murder. "That's him," she yelled, pointing straight at me. The two officers, Daniels and Mendes, walked over to me, and I showed them my ID, the title deed to the property, digital photos, and the video from the last couple of hours. Karen, still ranting about Leonard and her sulfur allergy, looked more and more unhinged by the second. Officer Daniels finally turned to her and said, "Ma'am, do you have any legal documentation showing that you're a tenant or were granted access by the property owner?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She stammered something about a verbal agreement and community precedent, but the officer wasn't half-wying it. "That's not legal tenancy," Daniels said, frowning. At that point, Karen pulled out her trump card. "I've been here 2 weeks. That makes me a legal occupant under California code." Mendes cut her off. "Ma'am, this isn't California. This is Colorado. That code doesn't apply here." The look on Karen's face went from pale to red to full nuclear. She accused me of being a scammer, of forging the deed, and screamed, "Call Leonard. He'll back me up." Leonard did not back her up. The HOA president, wearing a bathrobe and slippers, showed up 20 minutes later, looking absolutely exhausted. "Karen," Leonard muttered, barely looking at her. "You told me this was a vacant property. You said the homeowner gave you permission." "I never said that," I cut in. "I have it all on camera." Leonard's face dropped. He turned to the officers, mumbled something about Karen acting on her own, and added, "We'll need to review this with the board." She wasn't authorized. The officers gave her one final warning to vacate immediately or face trespassing charges. She refused, of course, and said she'd call her lawyer. I wasn't worried. By this point, I had all the evidence I needed. The next morning, I reviewed the footage from the hidden camera in the guest house. What I found shocked me. Karen, after being told to leave by the police, had snuck back onto my property, climbed through the laundry window, and turned off the porch light like she owned the place. She was sipping tea from one of my mugs, propping her feet up on the coffee table, acting like it was her weekend getaway. I called Officer Daniels again, showed him the new footage, and he admitted that, while the law was on our side, this was a civil matter that could take time to resolve. But now, it was personal. Karen wasn't just a trespasser. She was a delusional authority personified. My lawyer, Miss Connors, was brilliant. She knew exactly what we were up against. We started preparing a cease and desist and a formal trespassing affidavit. But as we dug deeper, the story only got worse. I found emails from Karen to someone named Greg Hall, a locksmith, asking him to break into my property and claiming she had the HOA's approval. My stomach churned. Greg Hall didn't care about the law. He was complicit in this whole thing. I took this new evidence straight to the HOA office, and Leonard looked like he aged 10 years when I handed him the USB drive with all the footage. He agreed to call an emergency HOA meeting, and when that meeting came, the whole neighborhood showed up. Karen, still trying to play the victim, sat in the front row, but the footage spoke for itself. Karen breaking in, hosting gatherings, lying to the police. The neighbors gasped. One by one, they started sharing their own stories of how Karen had bullied them, ticketed them for imaginary violations, or even told them how to decorate their own yards. By the end of the meeting, the HOA board voted to suspend Karen, and I finally felt like the neighborhood had taken its first breath in months. But Karen wasn't done yet. She filed a counterclaim against me, accusing me of community defamation. The board dismissed it in 12 hours. The neighborhood had been so afraid of her, so intimidated by her so-called community authority. But by the end, Karen's reign was over. We'd all had enough. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever lived in a community like this? Ever had someone try to play puppet master with your life and property? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the HOA system needs an overhaul? Or is it about time someone stood up to the Karens of the world? Let's talk about it.